Makes Me Wanna Holler by Nathan McCall. Chapter 13, Mr. Manor. In the fall of 1972, I began my senior year at a newly built school called Manor High. I started that year gripped by fear. I suppose every high school senior feels some anxiety, but I was seriously scared because of what the year symbolized, my expected entry into the real world. Graduation would mean that I was one step closer to having to deal with the white man. I was so uptight about it that I couldn't even concentrate on senior year activities, such as planning announcements, picking class rings, and ordering caps and gowns. I saw no fun in signing yearbooks, taking senior pictures, and preparing for the prom. In fact, I was so cynical about the whole affair that when a yearbook staff member asked me to state for the record my future ambitions, I poked out my chest and spouted the most outrageous, impossible dream that came to mind. I said, I want to be the first black president of the United States. About the best thing that happened to me that year was that I cut into Elizabeth Miller. I was walking down the halls one day, holding a portable radio to my ear, when Liz walked up and asked, "What are you listening to?" I said, "It's Family Affair by Sly Stone." Sly Stone? Ooh, can I hear it? I like that song. I looked at her, really noticing her for the first time. Liz, who had a slender, shapely frame, thick eyebrows, and dark, piercing eyes, was one of the finest red bones in school. I asked, "You listen to a lot of music?" She said, "Yeah, I listen to music all the time." "You want to get together and listen to some music?" "Sure, when?" "How about this evening at my place?" "Okay." Liz was an adopted only child, and I'd known her since junior high at Waters, but we hung in different crowds. We never socialized or talked at length until that exchange. She lived with her mother, who sent her to charm school in preparation for a modeling career. She had already begun to make a name for herself locally and had gone to New York on modeling jobs. Her father, a retired army man who opened the first service station in Cavalier Manor, had died when we were in junior high. Everybody knew Liz was deeply involved with an older guy, a focused, responsible dude who had held part-time jobs throughout school and joined the army after graduating the year before. I assumed they were going to get married when Liz graduated, but that didn't stop me from responding when she showed interest in me. We got together that evening in my parents' den, listened to music, and talked late into the night. I knew then that I was attracted to her and she to me. We were both novelties to each other. I viewed her as a special challenge, as someone who had more class than the fast, hard-edged girls I usually hung with. She was intrigued by street life, and I guess she saw in me a chance to learn more about it. Shell Shock and I were sticking up hard by then. We were falling into school dressed clean as hell and profiling hard at football games. Liz knew nothing about the drugs and the robberies, but she knew we were street dudes who were into a lot of things. Liz and I began seeing each other regularly after that first night. We went bowling and dancing on weekends, had picnics in the park, and did things I'd never taken the time to do with other girls. Sometimes we just sat around at each other's houses and listened to music and talked. I had never really spent so much time just talking with a girl. Usually, I hung with girls just long enough to get over, then made my way back to the block. But Liz had a magnetic personality. She made me want to be around her all the time. She was pretty and dressed well. She had a great sense of humor, and I loved to joan and make her laugh. She had a smile that spread clean across her face and ran up to her dark eyes and cheeks. We'd go places together, laughing and playing and teasing each other about everything. She had a temper, but her anger never lasted long. She could get mad about something, and the next day it would be completely forgotten. She wasn't like me. I could hold a grudge forever, and I lived for revenge. Liz put me in touch with emotions I didn't know I had. Once, I went fishing with her and her mother on a pier in Virginia Beach. That was the first time in my life that I'd been fishing. When night fell, the water and atmosphere seemed so peaceful and calming. The experience was almost spiritual. We stayed out there all night. Then Liz and I walked along the beach at sunrise and ate breakfast at a restaurant on the strip. At times like those, I got the vague sense that there was so much more to life that I was missing. But it all seemed so remote and out of my reach. Liz and I eventually fell in love, which was really strange for me. I was very much in touch with hatred, but love was a territory I felt unsure about. In a vague kind of way, I knew I loved my mother, my stepfather, my grandmother Bampoose, and my brothers, but none of us said that to each other. It was understood, but never, ever expressed. So I knew it, but didn't know it. But Liz inspired me to say it and to feel good about saying it. And she said it to me, and I knew she meant it. It was unlike anything I had ever experienced. Anything. Bampoose, my mother, and my stepfather liked Liz a lot. Partly, I think, because she kept me out of trouble. Being around her made me feel and act more like a human being. I was so smitten by her that I stopped hanging on the corner so much. The fella said she had my nose open, but I was feeling so good about what I felt inside that I didn't give a shit what they said. I stopped running women and focused solely on Liz, in school and out. In school, we talked at our lockers most mornings, ate lunch together, and met outside after classes and waited together for the school bus to take us home. Other people could see how much we were into each other. When underclassmen saw us together, they probably viewed us as a perfect fairy tale couple. It certainly felt like I was living a fairy tale. Early in the school year, the Student Government Association voted to have the student body select a homecoming king along with the traditional homecoming queen. Liz and I were among those nominated for the competition, which was nothing but a popularity contest. The winners were to be announced during halftime ceremonies at the school homecoming football game. The night of the game, I fell into the football stadium looking like Superfly in the flesh. I wore a long blue crushed velvet maxi overcoat, a white turtleneck, a matching white stingy brim Kango hat, white shoes, and blue and white elephant leg pants. I carried a wine flask over my shoulder, and although it was dark outside, I sported sunshades. I smoked reefer and drunk wine at Shell Shock's house before the game, and was flying high as a kite by the time I reached the Churchland Stadium. If Barnum and Bailey had seen me that night, they would have kidnapped me for their circus. During halftime, the nominees for various student offices were ushered onto the football field. The stadium was packed, but when the announcer began speaking over the public address system, a weird hush fell over the place. Then the speaker announced the runner-ups in different categories. He got around to the main competition, Homecoming King and Queen. I closed my eyes and heard him say, "And the winner for Mr. Manor is Nathan McCall." By then, I was so high that I could barely stand up straight and keep my eyes open. I stumbled forward and nodded, and students in the crowded bleachers cheered wildly and applauded. When Liz's name was called, she stepped forward and stood beside me, and someone handed her a bouquet of roses. When we were crowned Mr. and Mrs. Manor, we stood there side by side, beaming brightly at each other. It was a perfect fantasy come true. Nathan McCall and Elizabeth Miller, Mr. and Miss Manor. It was the first time since the days of spelling bee competitions that I've been recognized for anything constructive in school. Less than a month later, the fairy tale fizzled. Liz came to me one day and said, "I'm pregnant." The meaning of what she said didn't immediately sink in. At first, I assumed she was pregnant by her old boyfriend, but then I realized that he was away and that she hadn't been with him in a while. It was a wonder that I was surprised. In all those years of throwing down in bed with girls, I never took precautions. For the longest time, I thought the only way a woman could get pregnant was if she and a guy had an orgasm at the same time. Now I learned the hard way that that wasn't true. At age 17, I had a crumb snatcher on the way. Shell shock had gotten a girl pregnant the year before, and during high school, I'd had 3 other girls tell me they were expecting babies by me. One eventually admitted someone else was the father. I ignored the other 2. They were quick hits, crosstown girls I'd assumed were as sexually as active as I was and who had done a coin toss to come up with a father. But with Liz, I willingly owned up to my responsibility. I told her, I'll do what I have to do to help out, but I had no idea what that meant. I spent those last few months before graduation in a deep fog. Time was blurred. The graduation calendar was a reminder that my sentencing date was nearing, that sooner or later I would be shoved into the hostile world to sink or swim. I could see that other students, those who were preparing for college, seemed to have confidence in direction, so I decided, almost without thinking, that I'd go to college too. I could hide out there for a while and then figure out what I really wanted to do. With time running out, I applied to 3 colleges: Norfolk State, Virginia State, and Howard University. Nobody in our family had gone to college before but Billy, who had dropped out and moved away. On commencement day, my parents sat proudly in the bleachers of the school auditorium. I glanced up at them, smiled weakly, then turned away. My mother had notified all our relatives in North Carolina and New York, and had even told the minister of the family church, the Reverend Mr. Ramsbrough, had me come to a Sunday service to receive a special graduation gift. It was a blue Bible with my name inscribed in gold letters on the cover. Sitting in that graduation, I felt deeply depressed. I couldn't see where I'd be any better off with a diploma than the guys who had joined the military or gone to work at the shipyard. Dressed in my cap and gown, I sat there in a trance as one speaker after another talked glowingly about the challenges and bright futures we faced. During the ceremony, the principal singled out for special recognition the academic achievers who had received noteworthy college scholarship awards. I'll never forget that one guy, a tall, black, goofy dude, had gotten a $50,000 scholarship to study science at a major university. It seemed that the guys who got the biggest scholarships were the very ones the fellas and I considered lames throughout school. They were the ones we made fun of and harassed. They sacrificed popularity to do their work. Now this was their day. Watching them walk proudly to the stage, I wondered why they had gotten so much out of school and I had not. Tears welled in my eyes, and I struggled hard to hold them back as I watched friends walk forward to get their diplomas. Liz, with her gown bulging, bounced happily down the aisle. I saw Shell Shock, Shame, Chip, Cooter, and a few others who, along with me, were among the elites from our gang who made it through school. When my name was called, the walk down the aisle seemed like a death march. I walked up onto the stage, took my diploma, and shook the principal's hands without looking at him. I turned around, put on a brave face, and walked back to my seat. The carefree days were officially over. When we launched into the theme song chosen for our graduating class, it didn't help my mood. It was, "We've only just begun." We've only just begun. So many roads to choose. We'll start out walking, then learn to run. We've only just begun. After graduation, everybody gathered in the main auditorium for a reception. People were hugging and crying and taking pictures with family and friends. Shell Shock, seeing me leaning quietly against the wall, came over and asked, What's the matter with you, stick man? Why aren't you celebrating with everybody else? I snapped. What's there to celebrate? A diploma ain't nothing but a piece of paper. Shell Shock nodded. I know, it ain't shit. Unlike me, he didn't seem worried. He had a game plan. He had his superfly dreams. I had a pregnant girlfriend and the promise of a life in the white man's world with a hard way to go. A group of students had made plans to meet later that night and hold our own celebration at some beach. Driving my stepfather's car with Liz and a few other friends, I spent half the night riding around trying to find a place. The outcome of the evening was a fitting symbol for things to come. We got lost and never got there.